Welcome to the Haunted Playlist. Have you ever wondered what truly lies behind the closed doors of your neighborhood? What if your next door neighbor wasn't just odd, but downright dangerous? Tonight, we're delving into 5 chilling and true neighbor horror stories that will make you rethink who's living just a wall away. Lock your doors, check your windows, and stay tuned, because sometimes the real monsters are closer than you think. Story number 1. The sounds in the night. It began with faint noises, almost imperceptible at first. Sarah would wake in the dead of night to hear what sounded like muffled whispers or scratching. Living alone in her small apartment, she brushed it off as old pipes or even mice. But one night, she heard a voice clearly say, "I can see you." Panicked, Sarah called the police, who found nothing unusual. The sounds continued, growing louder and more distinct. She began to notice other strange occurrences. Her belongings slightly moved, and lights turned on when she was certain she'd left them off. Then came the discovery. Her upstairs neighbor had drilled a small peephole into her ceiling and had been watching her every move for months. Even more horrifying, they found disturbing writings and photographs in his apartment, detailing plans to harm her and documenting her daily activities. The police arrested him, but Sarah was left shaken. She moved out immediately, but she still struggles to sleep at night, haunted by the knowledge that someone was watching her so closely without her ever knowing. She now double-checks every lock and avoids upper-floor apartments entirely. Story number 2. The smell from next door. Jack and Emily had just moved into their dream home when they noticed an odd, foul smell coming from their neighbor's house. At first, they thought it might be garbage or a dead animal, but the smell persisted and grew worse. They tried to speak with their neighbor, Mr. Harris, but he always brushed them off, saying it was a plumbing issue. Curiosity got the better of them, and they began noticing other odd behaviors. Mr. Harris rarely left his home, and when he did, it was always in the dead of night. One summer evening, the smell became unbearable. Emily called the authorities to conduct a wellness check. What they found was beyond comprehension. Mr. Harris had been hoarding corpses in his home. He was a former funeral home worker who had taken bodies meant for cremation and hidden them in his basement. Authorities found dozens of bodies, each carefully preserved in bizarre rituals. The neighborhood was rocked by the discovery, and Jack and Emily moved out shortly after, unable to shake the macabre memories. The once idyllic home they dreamed of now felt cursed, a reminder of the horrors that had been just next door. Story number 3. The Friendly Neighbor. Lisa's new neighbor, Greg, seemed like the perfect friend. He was helpful, charming, and always quick with a smile. He helped her fix her fence, brought over baked goods, and even mowed her lawn when she was out of town. But Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Greg's friendliness felt forced. Over time, Greg's behavior became intrusive. He'd show up unannounced and ask strange personal questions. One night, Lisa returned home late and found her door slightly ajar. Panicked, she called the police, who discovered Greg's fingerprints everywhere inside her house. He had a spare key he'd stolen and had been entering her home regularly when she wasn't there. Even more horrifying, they found a hidden camera in her bedroom, one he'd installed to spy on her. Police also uncovered a shrine in Greg's home filled with photos of Lisa and personal items he had stolen. Greg was arrested, but Lisa moved to another state, unable to stay in a house that had been so thoroughly violated. She now lives with the constant anxiety of being watched, even in her new home. Story number 4. The Screams in the Basement. When Paul moved into his new apartment, he quickly noticed his downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Carter, was a bit eccentric. She rarely left her unit, and her windows were always covered. Late at night, Paul would hear strange noises, banging, muffled screams, and what sounded like chains rattling. When he asked her about it, she'd laugh nervously and change the subject. As weeks went by, Paul grew more uneasy. He'd see delivery men dropping off large packages at odd hours and noticed that Mrs. Carter always seemed nervous when he'd greet her. One night, the sounds grew so loud that Paul called the police. They forced entry into Mrs. Carter's basement and uncovered a horrifying scene. She had been keeping 2 people captive for years, chained and tortured. The victims had been reported missing from another state and had endured unimaginable suffering. Mrs. Carter was arrested, but Paul could never return to the building, haunted by the knowledge of what had been happening beneath his feet. He often wonders if he could have acted sooner to save those trapped in her basement. Story number 5, The Overgrown Garden. Martha loved her garden. It was her pride and joy, a sanctuary where she could escape the stresses of daily life. Her new neighbor, Mr. Bell, seemed to share her passion for plants, but his garden quickly became wild and overgrown. Despite its unkempt appearance, Martha often saw Mr. Bell working late at night, digging holes and moving soil. One day, Martha noticed a strange smell wafting from Mr. Bell's yard. Concerned, she peered over the fence and saw what looked like a freshly dug grave. She called the authorities, who discovered multiple bodies buried beneath the plants. Mr. Bell was a serial killer who used his garden to hide his crimes. Investigators found chilling evidence in his home, notebooks detailing his crimes and a collection of items from his victims. Martha's once beloved garden now feels tainted, a chilling reminder of the horrors that had been so close to her home. She's since stopped gardening, unable to shake the memories of what was uncovered next door. Thank you for watching the Haunted Playlist. These stories remind us that sometimes the most ordinary places hide the darkest secrets. So next time you smile at your neighbor, take a moment to wonder, how well do you really know them? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Haunted Playlist. Press the bell icon to get notified whenever we uncover more chilling tales. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.